Hey, how are you? I am Chris Robin, aka at Detroit Beastie, here with Fantasy Six Pack, joined by Dave, Corporal Eddie, also a part of FantasySixPack.net, and we are here live on a Friday evening to talk about some DFS stuff. We're going to comb over a few things, as Dave said it on the Sunday show last week. This is kind of a rough draft of what we've thought, so far throughout the week, and I have some weird ideas, and they all just hit me within the last few hours when I was finishing up the bottom of the barrel, the wide receiver article. So we're going to talk about that. Well, I'll talk about it because it is strange, but I think we can move a few things around, Dave, and get some really good wide receiver, yardage and touchdowns and stuff at very cheap values. But when we look at this thing from a 10,000-foot view, it's week 7 already. Every time we get together, it's like, how is it already weeks, and by the time this thing is done, but before we blink, it's going to be the wild card round. It's going to be who won't know. So let's stop and smell the roses and take these in each week as we go. So Dave, anything you want to mention in the opening before we just dig into the heart of the show here?
Well, I have a question, and you don't know what this question is yet. You couldn't, but here's my question. So this is from our man Ron Rainey. He's in our private Discord. We chat about NFL DFS and strategy on a literally
right?
daily
basis.
I'd have to look to see what his exact username is.
I think it's Obi-Ron for sure.
But he says, "Greeting DFS demon," and I don't think he means anything negative by that. But Chris, I could take that a couple of different ways. The first not safe for work one, I'll leave that alone. But we're talking about how this is our rough draft, right? This Friday show is our rough draft ahead of Sunday, and so I almost wonder if he's giving us a D already.
Yeah. Greetings, DFS D men. Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe A plus men.
I don't know what the hell he's insinuating. To be fair, I don't think it's anything weird or negative, but I don't know. I don't until we hear back from him. We don't know. Greetings, DFS D men. Like we're his den men.
I thought it was a nod towards Detroit, because we both live in Michigan and That's where I was.
No. Your first comment was de-essing men. De-essers, like we SDs. We don't SDs. Where you're married or have a longtime girlfriend. I think you got engaged during your trip in New Orleans. You still won't tell us if that happened.
I told you it didn't. I don't know where you came up with that. I mean, it's funny. Don't get me wrong. Like, we had a good laugh while we were in New Orleans. And I peeped on real quick, and I'm like, she's like, "What is he talking about?" I'm like,
"Do you have a ring in your pocket that you're not telling me about? Did you tell Chris something that you're not telling me?" And so I don't know what happened. Keith is here in the chat, one of our esteemed colleagues. And I will say this.
A good one here.
I will say that this time next week, we are going to be live again, but Dave is going to be with his son watching soccer. And to be fair, that's a no-brainer move. You're going to, go off with your son. You're only going to get, not only, but you're going to have a ton of time to do that with him. And so just do it. So Keith is going to be joining me here next week, and we're going to have a blast. I mean, last time I gave Keith the bump. I mean, I was around, but I said, you know what? Keith is wanting to get his hands in a little bit. He wants a little bit more responsibility. I was around and able, but I said, you know what? I'm going to give Keith the bump to be on the show with you. And then after it was done, you were ranting and raving. We went for an hour 19 and it was really great. And it was ba. So we shall see how Keith does in your absence and what I could dog you for. And then maybe down the road, it could be a 3-way. Right?
Whoa, that's where we get comments.
Yeah,
like this. That's where that comes in. Now Ron's on to something. He knew about the threesome that we were planning with Keith.
We could have a DFS den threesome, and we should promote it as such, because as we know, we're grown men. Sex sells. Sex will always sell. So that's Friday night at the Fantasy Six Pack, YouTube channel.
No,
we're going to be having a DFS den 3-way, and people will be like, "What if we get 1,000 people and they leave right away once they realize it's not 3 men making love to each other?" together. But once they,
It could be.
but who knows what it is. But let's get right into it. And when we look at this slate, week 7, there was a lot to like. The first game kicked off yesterday. Jacksonville was in New Orleans. Jacksonville, it does. And to be fair, it could. And that's nothing. I mean, I could do that with standing on my head. Rated R is what it should be, to be honest with you.
The beauty is Joe Bond doesn't watch any of these, so we can say whatever we want to, and he won't know.
You don't even read what we write. I mean, what the hell? What does Joe Bond write articles? What does he edits them? He doesn't read them, because let me give you I know we're 5 or 6 minutes in, but that's the fun of this thing.
Who cares?
I said it at the beginning of this before the season started. I wanted to treat this thing like a radio show, right? Like you could talk about anything, and we'll get to good content, but people want, we build relationships, and we have, reoccurring characters in the comments or callers that call in all the time. When I first sat down with Joe, and he goes, well, I know what you do, right? I know that you're successful with DFS and bottom of the barrel. And he goes, let's sit down and have a content. Like, what was your content schedule going to be like? And then come to find out, he's never read any bottom of the barrels. He's never watched a single DFS video, that I've produced. I'm like, so why are you hiring me then? Well, I think he hired me just because I have, a lot of clout, as the kids say. I have 20,000 plus followers. I know people, I'm trusted across the board in the industry. So
you're handsome.
I could be that too. So to me, Joe, I know he's got a lot on his plate. He's got a ton of kids and a wife, and they're always doing stuff. So to expect Joe to read and watch everything we do would be it's what he should do as the owner. Him and Keith should sit down at least once a week and sit and go through what they're paying for. But hey, if not, let's just let it roll and let it go for. But as I was getting to, the Jacksonville Jaguars beat New Orleans yesterday in New Orleans in what struck me as an odd game. It had all the makings of literally like a WWF, like a championship match, where it's like they're getting beat up, and then there's a comeback, and then you're like, maybe the home team is going to win. And then there was that awesome play by Christian Kirk, and then the game was over. And it just, I don't know, it was so weird. I'm not a conspiracy guy by any means, but to me, if you're going to talk about scripted football games, to me that one could have been scripted to a certain extent, because it's Thursday night, it's on Amazon Prime. I don't know how much viewership they're getting there, but to me, that game was, it was a great game. It was a fantastic game. But as we move down the list, we have a ton of games. Sunday night football is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to do that video. Monday night football is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to do that video. But the main slate is what we're going to talk about here tonight. And I will toss it to you, because I've talked for a long time and I'm getting a little red in the face here. So let's get into it. What are your first initial reactions when we look at quarterbacks? And before you speak, I do want to tell folks on Twitter, right? Dave has started this new thing where he's just making all of his information available in these threads and everything, and I'm sharing them, and people are really getting into them. So those for sure need to keep going, and I'll keep sharing them. And it's a beautiful thing how we just figure this stuff out on the fly, right? In between our already good content here at Fantasy Six Pack. So to me, it's just a no-brainer. So let's get into some quarterbacks. Give me some initial reactions at the quarterback spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts right at the top with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I know it doesn't really matter for DFS purposes, but he's a guy we can argue is the best quarterback in football. And nobody would think that it's unusual to have Mahomes in that conversation. But DFS wise, what it really comes down to is, he's on the team that has the highest implied total on the slate. It's by far the best game environment on the slate. Chargers giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points. That's something I'm going to reference a lot here. And, I got to give nod to TJ Hernandez and the guys over at 4for4. That is their proprietary, formula, whatever you want to call it. And TJ was kind enough to allow me to utilize that and, just cite the resource, because it's, they should, get credit for their work. Right. but I find it very valuable. So, anyways, like I said, Chargers giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points to QBs this year. Anytime, that we can afford to pay up at a position, especially at the QB position, I think that it's wise to do so. So Mahomes is going to be my lean this week. I think Jordan Love's another route you can go. Prior to last week, he had hit at least 3.5x value in each game, and that is perfect for cash, right? Like I constantly talk about, looking to hit at least 3x value, specifically with our punt plays. Jordan Love is not a punt play, but great matchup here going up against Denver. Denver's given up the 30th most schedule adjusted points to quarterbacks this year, so very good matchup. It looks like Aaron Jones is going to play as well. He's got all his wide receivers healthy. Now his tight ends are healthy. Aaron Jones is healthy, so no reason really to think that you're not going to get a cash viable performance out of Jordan Love. And then last one I have here is just Geno Smith. The thing you got to look at here, though, is two main targets, Lockett and Metcalf. They're kind of banged up. That doesn't bode well, but, I guess it is what it is, right? If they're both healthy, then this is a matchup here that is fantastic. Arizona giving up the 31st most points to, schedule adjusted fantasy points to quarterbacks. So we're looking at, the three quarterbacks facing the three easiest teams to score points on from the quarterback position here. So it all kind of makes sense. But I am locked into playing Kenneth Walker this week. That's something that, we'll talk about a little bit later. Kind of need to see how things are going to shape out to whether, I would even play Geno along with Kenneth Walker, or whether that makes sense or not. I think this is the second best game environment on the slate, not as good as that Chiefs and Chargers, but still the second best. So I would lean towards saying K9 and Smith is okay, but I'm not ready yet to make that proclamation. More to come on Sunday for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to get into some of these wide receivers. And I know you mentioned loving Jordan Love, and he had hit last week. He was awful, if I'm not mistaken. But again,
it is a bye week.
That was then, and this is now. I always say that in the articles here, but I have a slew of Green Bay Packers wide receivers, and we'll get to that. But I'm shocked that you didn't mention Matthew Stafford. He is one of my most favorite plays this week. Stafford, the Rams play Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 12th overall DVP-wise against quarterbacks. And when you look at Stafford, 6'7" on FanDuel, 6'5" on DK, $29 on Yahoo. You have Cooper Kupp back. Who are their running backs? They're going to have a rookie running back, Zach Evans, which I think is going to be. Yeah, maybe. I mean, who else is going to carry the ball there? I mean, they could throw it all over the ballpark. But to me, Matthew Stafford needs to be on our short list, right? It is only Friday. We have a few days before lock and all that stuff. But Matthew Stafford is on my list. I'm going to go back to Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell, those two guys, I've been on them all season. And last Sunday, I was able to have that Washington Atlanta game on in my earbud while I was cutting bushes and doing stuff for my uncle. And Sam Howell was I believe that between the two of them, they had 3 or 4 touchdowns combined, before halftime. And I texted you later on in that day, and again, Sam Howell, Washington is playing in the Giants. Yes, the DVP matchup for quarterbacks is in the red. It's 13th, but I don't think when you look at Sam Howell right now, is he coming into his own? Is he ever going to be anything great? That's not we don't even need to discuss that on a show like this. We don't even need to discuss that on a DFS show ever, because this is a week-to-week thing. But as I look at Sam Howell this week against the Giants, who I think are going to get back Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And to me, why I like Sam Howell might be off the beaten path, but the New York Giants, they're going to be trying to find a rhythm in this game, right? They haven't had all these guys, working together on the field in a few weeks. So they might have some cracks and third downs and 3 and outs all the time. So I could see a case here where Sam Howell gets an extra possession or two. And if that happens, we know he loves to chuck the football, to Samuel. Dotson's he's a placeholder now for all God's sakes. But Sam Howell's chucking the football. to Terry McLaurin, to Curtis Samuel. So to me, Sam Howell makes for a nice cheap move, and he could easily get to 300 yards. He hasn't done, I think in the last 3 games, he's done it once, and it was in like week 4, but it was like 388 yards. It was insane. And then 217, and then 237, something like that. So he hasn't thrown for 300 yards in a few games, but to me, this strikes my fancy. When we move down, Desmond Ridder, again, the Falcons are at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was just beaten by the Lions, which it was a good game. I'm not going to say Tampa Bay's a bum-ass team and Baker Mayfield sucks. I respect, pretty much everybody to a certain extent, but Desmond Ridder, to me, playing against Tampa Bay after Tampa they didn't score a touchdown in that game. They had 6 points. They scored 2 field goals. So that's got to be creating some sort of animosity, right? In practice, in the locker room, right? I mean, I guess, again, any good football team is going to say, let's put this behind us and all that. But in a Baker Mayfield led offense, you have to think some people in the building are going to go, well, we only had, 3 or 6 points, 2 field goals. Baker Mayfield, is he still able to get it? I don't know. But to me, Desmond Ridder is coming into his own. Back-to-back games, 300 plus passing yards, if I'm not mistaken. And his price tag is still cheap. It's low as dirt. It's 6.9 on FanDuel, 5.2 on DK. And Keith is saying Falcons throwing 60% of their offensive plays the last 3 weeks. So Desmond Ridder, to me, and he's running and he's using his legs. So to me, Desmond Ridder was a guy I snagged late in a lot of drafts, especially in the fishbowl, things along those lines. So right now, us Desmond Ridder owners are sitting in great places. You mentioned Jordan Love. So one more guy I want to mention in a really tough spot. He's in a really tough spot, but he plays for a really good team, and that's Jared Goff. The Lions go to Baltimore. Baltimore's first overall against quarterbacks, but have the Baltimore Ravens defensive line met an offensive line like the Lions have this season? I don't think they've played a team that has an offensive line like the Lions do. There's only 4 or 5 offensive lines in the league like the Lions have. And to me, Jared Goff, you can go through everything from start to finish. People get crazy on social media, and I saw one. I might have saved it in my phone. I don't want to spend a ton of time trying to look for it if I saved it in my phone, but it was a Jared Goff, comparison to Jalen Hurts to start the season. And Jared Goff is by far and away the better quarterback than Jalen Hurts across the board in everything, in throwing percentage and touchdowns and in everything. And people don't want to hear that kind of shit. They don't care. They say Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, we're going Jalen Hurts all the time. Those are the Johnny come lately people. Those are the schlubs, the bums, right? Not like us. We dig into all this stuff. But Jared Goff, going into Baltimore, we are 5-1. He's 7.6 on FanDuel, 6.4 on DK, $27 on Yahoo. You're looking at a thing here where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be given as much as he can handle. What are we going to see from that? We don't know. We haven't seen anything like that before. David Montgomery, fingers crossed, is back next week. But to me, Jared Goff, with the weapons around him, and when I say weapons, I'm talking about Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds. Can you consider Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds weapons? No, but they're being used as such and they're playing as such. So to me, Jared Goff in Baltimore is going to be, everybody's going to be freaked out and scared to play Jared Goff, but maybe it's just you got Lions jerseys in the back there. We all know Detroit is in my flipping handle here. I'm all in on Jared Goff this week, and we shall see. And to be fair, Sunday morning, I'm gonna toss it back to you when we get to running backs. I'm gonna write a note down, and I want to see what Jared Goff's ownership percentage is.
It's going to be low.
20-30 minutes before lock, because I think Jared Goff has an excellent case to get to 275, 280 yards. And 2 to 3 touchdowns. And again, I'm not saying that you think touchdown, that doesn't have to be a bomb. What if he throws a pass in the backfield and Gibbs takes it to the house, kind of like a CMC Brock Purdy kind of situation here. So Jared Goff to me is one of my most favorite plays this week. And to be fair, I'm going to say it now. It has nothing to do with my Lions homerism. I can tell you that with full confidence, and I'm not lying. I rarely do I lie, but I would not lie about that. Jared Goff is just a good quarterback right now. And to me, in Baltimore, this is a game. Let me dig into my Lions fandom briefly. We're already 20 minutes into this thing. If Jared Goff and the Lions can go on the road and beat Baltimore and then come back home 6-1, I mean that road trip, right? Last week who'd they beat last week?
Tampa.
They beat Tampa in Tampa, and then if they beat Baltimore in Baltimore and then come back home, now we're legit. That's what everybody's saying. We'll after this 2-game road trip, we'll see where we're at, and if they come out of that thing 2-0, 6-1, I mean, where are we going to go from there? But I will toss it to you for the running backs position.
Well, before we do that here, Keith did bring something up here I want to read. He said he loves Lamar this week. He feasts on zone defense. Lions run the 6th most zone in the league, and they've allowed QBs to run. Mahomes had 50 yards rushing on him in week 1. And what I would say to that really is I can't play Lamar against, that defense the way it's playing right now in cash. In MME, no problem at all, because I'll talk about Zay Flowers a little bit later, but the Lions have turned into a run funnel. They've been so good, a pass funnel. They've been so good against the run that teams are forced to pass against them, and teams have been behind and forced to pass against them. Now, I don't know that necessarily the Lions jump out ahead and stay ahead in this particular game, but either way, it's going to be hard for them to run the ball. So I think they are going to pass at a higher rate than what they typically do. So for MME, I like Lamar. I just can't go there for cash. It's not even on the radar for me there.
And I do want to say this as well. Brian Branch is back at practice.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to get too Detroitish, but you're exactly right.
Anzalone is healthy. There's going to one of those two guys is going to be a Lamar Jackson spy. That's going to be their job the entire game.
Jack Campbell,
yeah. So one of those guys. So someone is going to be spied on Lamar Jackson, and if it's Brian Branch, God help Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying by any means that Brian Branch as a rookie is better than Lamar Jackson, but Brian Branch is so effing talented, and Anzalone is I won't say he's talented and he's good enough, but there is going to be a spy on Lamar Jackson. So for him to get to 100 rushing yards,
could even be Aiden Hutchinson at times. I mean,
near impossible.
We're going so Detroit deep here that
I know.
We need to move on to running backs here.
Yeah, go start.
I could
start with Jamar Gibbs then. Might as well start with Jamar Gibbs.
Yeah, right. No, I'm starting with a guy that we can mark down as an early clubhouse leader for our touchdown parlay, and that's Kenneth Walker. From the moment I looked at the slate, Walker just stood out to me as a guy that was probably going to be a cash lock. And as the week goes on, that's exactly where he's been. Hit at least 2X in every game except the opener. He's had 6 TDs in the last 4 games since then. And he's been at 3X value over that time frame as well. Great matchup against Arizona. Sorry, Kelly Singh. But great matchup against Arizona. They're going up to 28th most adjusted fantasy points running backs this year. So I'm locking Kenneth Walker in. Jerome Ford, a guy that we haven't talked about in a little bit. I haven't talked about him at all, but I don't know that he's been an afterthought. But, he hasn't, burned down the house since, Chubb has been out. But he's really popping for me in projections this week. For my player pool, he's currently the 3rd cheapest running back, so that always helps. Going up against an Indy team that's going up to 25th most adjusted, fantasy points to running back, so a very good matchup here. My concern, we saw him have his lowest snap share last week at just 50% since the Chubb injury. I don't know if that's, Hunt getting more involved in the offense or if it was a blip on the radar. We shall see. A guy I don't want to talk about, but I have no choice here. Deonta Foreman. I played him last week in cash. Wasn't great. The volume wasn't bad, but he didn't do a ton with it. Rashawn Johnson, I thought he was playing this week. He is ruled out already. So D'Onta Foreman is right back in the mix. Same exact situation he was in last week, kind of. There is no Justin Fields this week. I think that probably helps Foreman. There's less competition for carries. You could argue that, having that absolute nobody rookie quarterback could just kill the offense. But I honestly think they lean on Foreman here. And it's a harder matchup, last week than he had this week. Like I said, Indy 25th against, schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs. He got 15 carries last week. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get, 20 or more this particular week. It's not pretty, but the savings make it to where we can do what we want elsewhere. So probably going to be worth it in the end. Isaiah Pacheco talked about that KC game. Another way to, get a piece from by far the best game environment on the slate. Absolutely fine pairing Mahomes with Pacheco. Kind of had a slow start to the season. He's now been averaging, 3X over his last 4 games, scored a TD in all 3 of those. So very much in play. Josh Jacobs, we talk volume is king, right? And, Jacobs continues to see elite volume. You're talking about those Twitter threads that I was posting this week. A couple of things that were in there. Josh Jacobs, is the leader amongst running backs in targets, 4th in the league with an almost 85% opportunity share. Hasn't been efficient, but the volume's there. Chicago, 31st in schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs. So maybe this is the week, that Jacobs picks it up. I think not having Jimmy G there makes them lean more on him. So again, another situation where I think the quarterback being out helps that running back. Aaron Jones, I think he's in play this week. Will he be limited is really the big question. If we get news that he's not limited, I think we can feel very confident, even if he's 90%. I'm very happy with that. Goes up against Denver, giving up the most schedule-adjusted fantasy points to running backs. And we know he's a weapon in the passing game as well as just the running game. So another guy we need to sit and just wait and see what happens at kickoff. And then lastly, we'll talk Jahmyr Gibbs, right? He's healthy. He does not have an injury designation heading into the week. Looks to be the only healthy running back that, Detroit is happy and thrilled to roster. Everyone else around him is going to be, a practice squad guy that's been moved up. Even though it looks as though he's 100%, we've heard Dan Campbell, the Lions coach, say, hey, we're kind of forced to give this kid the workload and we'll give him as much as he can handle. Basically, I still have my reservations. Week 3 when Montgomery was out, Gibbs was fully healthy, only gave us about 1.5 value on his salary. And that was on 18 touches, 17 carries, only 1 catch. So we were disappointed. He got 80 yards. That's where his points came from, but that wasn't enough to pay off his salary. I think he's a much better MME play this week, not to, step on your toes. I think he's a better MME play, though, as opposed to cash. But if you wanted to go there, he's safer than D'Onta Foreman, but you're paying for it, Chris. Last one. Last one. The whole Rams thing, right? Zach Evans and the whole deal here. I'll put this up because Keith nailed it. Darrell Henderson is really making things interesting here. Sean McVay flat out said earlier today, yeah, I have an idea of what I want to do at running back, but I'm absolutely not telling you. And I'm not telling you because I don't have to. And why would I? And so as much as I would love to have, a stone minimum, at least on DraftKings, Zach Evans available, I just don't have, I don't have it in me to take and do something that risky. I'd much rather pay, a little bit more for D'Onta Foreman and get the guaranteed volume than save a little bit on Evans, who could be a complete zero, Chris. So that's what I got at running back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a ton too. And are we 100% sure that Aaron Jones is going to play this week? We're 100% sure.
It's only Friday evening. I would say it's probably about 75, 80%. So I'm pretty sure he's playing. It's more a matter of how limited, if at all, is he?
Yeah, so
That's the question.
because I headlined the bottom of the barrel running back edition with AJ Dillon, and they're playing in Denver. Denver's literally dead last against opposing running backs, and he is their goal line back.
Yep.
Well, he was their goal line back when Aaron Jones is not around, but we shall see. Is Aaron Jones eased back into action? And regardless of what we hear, all the weird coach speaking stuff, I'm still going to go all in with AJ Dillon, 6'4" on FanDuel, 5'3" on DK. The opposing defense is just too sweet.
Yeah.
But again, look at what happened last week. Kansas City, that was a weird ass game. It was like an 18-9 or 19-8 final. It was really weird. One of those games, just one of those things. I'm not saying the same thing is going to happen this week between Green Bay and Denver, but we have to at least look AJ Dillon's way to maybe, let's say Aaron Jones does play, and I hope he does. He's been one of my favorite running backs for a long time, even though he plays for a NFC North foe. Could still respect these guys. I'm not an asshole. I don't hate people. I'm not an asshole at all. I mean, to be fair, I'm one of the nicest guys on earth. To be fair, I can be an asshole when I want to be, and if you want me to be, keep that up.
See, there it is. There's the energy.
Yes. Kareem Hunt, Cleveland's going to the Colts. The Colts, nothing special right now on defense, at least 24th against opposing running backs. And when we look at Cleveland, Deshaun Watson hopefully will be back. That would be great for Elijah Moore, who I've mentioned in the article, who's in my notes. But Kareem Hunt is a guy that can catch passes, that can take the football. He can score on the goal line, and given his price tag, I like him a lot. I do have Jahmyr Gibbs mentioned in the article. If you want to read my blurb about him, you can go to fantasy6pack.net and search bottom of the barrel. You can find it there. And while you're there, might as well sign up for a subscription there, because there are as cheap as the cheapest one is like $9.99 a month, and you get to pick which sport you want. Hockey is back. I know the baseball playoffs are kind of winding down. I have the Arizona Diamondbacks jersey, the custom Diamondbacks jersey in the background, but NBA is coming back around. So this is the time when you're going to want to get in, because right now it's as cheap as it's ever going to be. And I don't see a case where Joe or Keith would be like bump up the prices dramatically and completely, because that would alienate a whole crowd of folks that would, split. We're trying to bring people in here. That's why they hired me. That's why they hired, you've been here. They hired Keith and me and a couple other people to, let's get some more action in here. When we look down the list, there's something about Javonte Williams. Guy hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season, but Jaleel McLaughlin has actually found the end zone before him. But Javonte Williams, that same Denver Green Bay game, I like that game. The defenses are both just like Swiss cheese, and there's a lot to go around there. Javonte Williams, $6,000 on FanDuel, 5.4 on DK. Javonte is going to see at least bare minimum a dozen carries, but the only bummer with him was last week he wasn't involved in the passing game at all. He didn't even get a target. It's not like he was, they threw him the ball twice and they didn't look his way at all. He was just primarily a rusher last week, and that's okay. And again, I know, a guy like Javonte, Denver looks at long term. They want to, they don't want to do too much. They don't want to put too much on his plate, freshly coming back from tearing up his knee last season. But right now, this is week 7. This isn't week 2, week 3, boys. I mean, this is the time where, the rubber meets the road. We got to step it up, right? All the players, the coaches, I hope that's what they're saying to their squads. Like right now, Javonte Williams, you're healed up, man, right? I know if you've got some like weird superstitions about your knee, I'm sorry, but you got to get rid of that shit, because we're about to hand you 15, 16 carries a game. And if you can't handle it, say it right now, and we will look in another direction. But to me, right now, Javonte Williams is going to be the man in Green Bay. Green Bay 4 against Green Bay this weekend, excuse me. And you mentioned Roschon Johnson. He was been dealing with concussions. He missed last week because of that. Will he be back this week? Hopefully.
No, he's already been ruled out.
Oh, already been ruled out. Okay, so Donta Foreman, again, we've seen him in spots when he's been given the football. He can really do special things with that. Jalen Warren, everybody that Najee Harris is just like, he's become, I don't know, it's weird. Najee Harris was all the rage a few years ago in dynasty circles on Twitter, and people were like, literally fighting, and friendships were lost over your Najee Harris take. And now this guy, you're lucky if he gets you 8 to 10 points in a seasonal or in a dynasty format a game. But to me, Jaylen Warren is the more explosive guy, and Najee Harris is hanging on by a thread as that RB1. But as the season goes on, we're going to see, can Najee Harris pick up the pace and be that blue chip prospect that he was drafted to be? But when you look at Jaylen Warren, the matchup stinks, right? The Niners, or excuse me, the Rams are ninth overall against that. But when you look in terms of as wide receivers, right? Because Jaylen Warren's going to catch passes out of the backfield, the Rams are a little less forgiving against pass catchers. So I could see Jaylen Warren at the running back position scoring a touchdown through the air, and given his price tag, that would be a beautiful thing. Keontae Ingram, everybody rushed to grab this Mario DeMarcaro kid, and everybody was told to do that, right? And some of us, I was looking around like, I wasn't buying it. I wasn't buying it because Keontae Ingram was still, the RB1 on the depth chart, right? And neither one of them did much. But when you look at this matchup against Seattle, 16th overall, I would say that's green. There's 32 teams in the league. You divide that in half, that's 16th. So they're literally middle of the road against opposing running backs. Keontae Ingram's price tag is sweet. One guy I want to stop on briefly, and that's Latavius Murray in Buffalo against New England. Buffalo, I think is just going to, New England it's a bummer to see the New England empire crumble like it has, but man, Buffalo's going to put a hurting on them. And I could see a case where Latavius Murray, in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, just grinding out the clock. This guy always falls forward. He reminds me of Fred Taylor. Remember him in Jacksonville? Granted, he had 12,000. I think he finished with 11 or 12,000 rushing yards at the end of his career. And Latavius is at like 8 or 9. He's never going to get there. But to me, at this week right now, 5-6 on FanDuel, only 4-4 on DK, Latavius Murray is going to get a ton of work in a game where Buffalo should run away with it early, going down the list and down and down and down. I finally think I have Jerome Ford written really down low in there. You remember 2 weeks ago, right at the end of the broadcast, this was the Sunday show. Any last thoughts? I said, I have a feeling about Jerome Ford. I don't know where it's coming from. And come to find out, Jerome Ford had a pretty good game that week. Just wanted to throw that out there. Jerick McKinnon, I've been pumping him the last few weeks, or the first few weeks of the season, and he's done nothing. And I'm still willing to go back to him because the Chargers are 25th overall against running backs, but they're 32nd overall against wide receivers. Jerick McKinnon didn't get a single carry last week. I think he caught 4 or 5 targets. So to me, you would then look at McKinnon as a wide receiver, where the Chargers are even worse against them. So to me, Jerick McKinnon, 4-7 on FanDuel, 4-7 on DK. This is a no-brainer to me in GPP formats, where I'm going to get Jerick McKinnon in as many lineups as possible. And I know we all love Kenneth Walker III, but at what point in the game, let's just say, I have the final score there. Arizona, Seattle. Seattle wins this one 28-14, something along those lines. So Seattle will score 4 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker I think Kenneth Walker actually scores twice. What if he scores 3 times, right? I could see a case to be made where the rookie, Zach Charbonnet, gets the whole fourth quarter to himself, right? And given the price tag, given the DVP information, he's 4-7 on FanDuel, 4-3 on DK. If Zach Charbonnet can get to double-digit carries, I think he returns value. Like a dump truck full of value, given his price tag, given the way the game is going to flow, given the final score that I have. As I said, Seattle wins this one 28-14, something like that. So just little I don't know how to say it, quips and idiosyncrasies that I see here that I make my decisions around. So my favorite plays in GPP purposes would be Jaylen Warren, Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon, and Kareem Hunt. That would be where I'm going. And when we look at wide receiver, how about we'll do this? I'll give one guy really quick, and then I'll kick it back to you for cash games. When we look at this thing, Cooper Kupp is the most expensive running back on the main slate. And that's only because Tyreek Hill plays on Sunday Night Football. He's not part of the main slate, or he would have been more expensive. But Cooper Kupp, the most expensive wide receiver on the main slate. And when we go from here, this is where I'm going to need about 20 minutes of time. So maybe I won't say nothing now. I'm going to toss it to you because I have some really weird ideas at the wide receiver position. And we're talking like 2 to 3 wide receivers from the same team that I'm going to put in my entries, and it's going to be New York Giants wide receivers, Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers, and the Arizona Cardinals wide receivers. Those are my 3 teams that I'm going to just absolutely hammer their wide receivers. So I'll toss it to you, and then you can give me a little bit of time when we talk about wide receivers.
Yeah, and I'll probably cover a little bit of that here because some of this is going to be in play for cash. I start with Cooper Kupp, a guy, again, we can earmark him as a potential, touchdown parlay consideration. If you've been following along with, what I do with cash lineups all year long, you know that I try to find a way to play as many studs in my cash lineup as possible. Kind of a, stars and scrubs, studs and duds, however you want to put it. I talk about, volume all the time, right? And Kupp is just the definition of, DFS stud, and his volume is the reason why. I mean, he's absolutely elite. Very rarely puts up a dud as well. So, he's not a guy who ever kills you. He usually, gives you a ceiling performance. But even when he quote unquote disappoints, he's still putting up points. This is going to be his 3rd week back. Put up 3.5x pretty much value so far in the first 2 games. And, when you're putting up a whole bunch of salary to play the guy, it's nice to know that, he's so consistently going to give you, that return. So absolute cash lock for me. Pittsburgh is giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points to receivers. So I probably won't have a single lineup in any format that doesn't have Cooper Kupp. I don't even care about, chalk or not this week because he's good chalk if anything, Curtis Samuel, guy that's been doing a whole bunch with the opportunities that has been given to him the past, 3 weeks, averaging 4.7, X value over that time frame. Commanders, like we've talked about, you talked about Sam Howell, they're passing at an extraordinarily high rate. Their pass rate over expectation, 8%, above league average. That's the 2nd highest on the slate. Only Kansas City at 8.3% is higher. Giants giving up the 13th most schedule adjusted fantasy points to receivers. So it's kind of a neutral matchup there, but he's popping in the projections, and he's the 3rd cheapest, at least on DraftKings, option I have in the cash pool for receivers. So the price is right there. These are probably guys that are on your list as well here. Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown. We're talking about the Cardinals. I'm putting them together because in cash, I can only see playing a max of one of them this week. The 2 lineups I'm kind of debating between now, which is borderline irrelevant because it's Friday. But, the ones that I'm debating between right now, one's got Wilson and one has Brown. It's just a matter of which can I afford. Seattle giving up the 30th most adjusted scheduled fantasy points to receivers. So matchup is great. Brown been extraordinarily consistent. He's just more expensive than Wilson, who's been a little more up and down. He's still been putting up, Wilson, that is, 3.1x value over the past, 5 weeks, whereas Brown's giving you 3.5. So it really just comes down to, if you want to play one of them, which I'm going to, it looks like, which one do you have the money to afford? Do you have the money for Brown or do you have to, go with Wilson? Drake London, I actually reached out to Keith, before we went on here, and I asked him, I said, Keith, is this kind of a temporary thing with seeing Drake London, back to getting some volume here, or is this sticking around? And he says it's sticking around. So, just like we're the, experts when it comes to the Lions, that's my go-to for, Atlanta. And, London, like I say, he's been seeing his volume and scoring going up each of the last 3 weeks. Targets have gone from 7 to 9 up to 12 last week. Value, he's gone 2.5, 5x on the salary as well. So, I mean, he's trending in the right direction. Tampa giving up the 21st most schedule adjusted fantasy points to receivers. So the matchup is decent, not a smash spot, but it's good. I like him. Rashee Rice, again, another guy that is in this game environment that I like, right? The Chiefs and Chargers. He's another guy, seems to be solidifying himself as a wide receiver one in that offense. Now, let's not forget, Travis Kelce is the top pass catcher in that offense, but from a wide receiver perspective, they've got a lot of guys in KC, right? But Rashee Rice seems to be the guy who's really stepping up to be, the guy in that offense. 21 targets the past 4 weeks, well ahead of, 15 for the next closest non-Kelce guy, which happens to be Kadarius Toney, but he's providing us with value, pretty much routinely putting up around 3x each week. I don't force correlation in cash games, as I've said, but if you're playing Mahomes and he naturally fits, go for it. Wan'Dale Robinson, a guy I've been talking about here since he's been healthy. It would seem that as long as he's healthy and he's remaining, so cheap, he's going to be a mainstay, at least in the pool. Since returning in week 3, he's put up basically 3x each week. I think that's, like I've said, that's right in the range for where we like to see our quote unquote punt plays. I mean, volume's been there. You don't usually get volume from punt plays, but he's seen at least 5 targets in each game. He said 6 in each of the last 3, and he had 8 the last week. Guy hasn't even gotten to the end zone yet, and he's still been hitting value. So if he were to get in the end zone this week, which I think that you think that that's very possible based on your reaction and based on your talk about wanting to play, receivers out of this game, I think that, you like it. And then, to put the icing on the cake, Washington giving up the 31st most schedule adjusted fantasy points to wide receivers. So not only is he a great cash target, I think he makes for a very interesting MME play. Zay Flowers, we talked earlier, about this Lion and Baltimore game. I talked about how the Lions have become a pass funnel, because they've been stopping the run so well. The teams have been forced to pass. This is a guy here getting 28% of the target share in Baltimore. That leads the team. Lions have been 23rd in adjusted schedule fantasy points to wide receivers because of the volume that they're forcing in the passing game. So that's interesting. Then the last guy here I'll talk about, Josh Palmer. Again, another way to get access to this Chargers and Chiefs game. Gives you, a pretty cheap way here to get in on the action. Without Mike Williams, Palmer has seen 15 targets in the last 2 games combined, a reasonable 2.5x value in that period of time. The fear when Mike Williams went out is that, Quentin Johnson was going to kind of slide into or take control of that wide receiver 2 role. That has not happened. Palmer had even twice as many snaps last week, twice as many routes last week, out-targeted him 7-2. So it's Palmer's show until it isn't.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. And because of all the phenomenal stats you gave against the Washington defense and how they stink against wide receivers, I'm going to get right into it. And my trio is Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the rookie Jalen Hyatt. We'll start with Slayton briefly. The 69 yards of total offense we saw from him on a team high. He led the team in targets last season. That was great to see. Washington 30th overall DVP wise against opposing running backs. Wan'Dale Robinson 5.6 on FanDuel, DK 3.8, 15 on Yahoo. Double back to Slayton 5.7 on FanDuel, 3.7 on DK, $12 on Yahoo. And then I wrote a bunch of guys in really small here because I know I still got to fit tight ends and the whole schedule and all that stuff. And with Hyatt here, he is as low as it gets, 4.7 on FanDuel and $3,000 on DraftKings. And again, Washington is bad news against opposing wide receivers. And this is one of those games here where I mentioned it in the Daniel Jones blurb. I mentioned it in the Darius Slayton blurb in terms of this Giants offense finally getting back together again, right? Daniel Jones should be playing starting at quarterback on Sunday. We saw Saquon Barkley return to action last week, and he was phenomenal. So now this week they're going to have all the pieces of the pie back here. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, their wide receivers, Slayton, Wandale, and Hyatt are going to be there as well. So to me, it's going to be one of those games where they're going to be figuring things out on the fly, because again, that's more so a usage you would probably want to hear from a practice report. We're working things out on the fly in practice rather than in a real game action. But again, there is nothing on earth that can replicate real life game time action. Even preseason and scrimmages, those are still hard and they're beating the shit out of each other, but that's not like a 4-quarter full throttle NFL game here. So to me, Slayton, Wandale, and Jalen Hyatt, I would have no problem. And I've already started to build lines, and I've shared I shared one with you today when I on my way home from picking up dinner this evening here, and that was just something straight from my gut while I was waiting for my food to fill. And it was that was the 4:05 p.m. game only, and I like I like that kind of stuff because it was only 4 games, I believe. And the 425 Express is only 2, and that is, I believe, Green Bay, Denver. No, what is that?
Chargers, Chiefs. Yep, Chargers, Chiefs, Green Bay, Denver. So 2 games that you like.
Yeah. And so when we look at this thing with the 3-headed New York Giants wide receivers, you got to have stones to put all 3 in the same entry, but then you'd have to, without a doubt, put Daniel Jones at quarterback. So you have one entry that's completely tied to the Giants. That's fine. Let's mark it off. Giants, we've done that. We've got, I'm not saying replicate the Giants stack over and over again. One time is good enough in a GPP. You could put it in a single entry, because I know as it stands now, they have about 5 or 6 dollar single entry tournaments. One of them could be the New York Giants stack. The second one would be the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver stack. And that, to me, consists of Rashee Rice, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. One thing I want to say about Kadarius Toney is, if this is now October, it is the fall, it is a little bit colder, but even in the summer, when you look at, he wears a full like I think, what was the name, like the guys would wear in Green Bay in December, the full the full
like
thing on,
yeah,
like a face mask, like a ski mask, right? And he wears those regardless of the game, the city, the summer. And it's just good. Just right now, or after this broadcast is done, just go look up his photo on Pro Fantasy Profile Photo, or what is it called? Pro Football Reference. That's what it's called. His page, he's got that whole, and he's got this weird smile. And anyways, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice. And this one is as simple as it gets. The Chargers dead last against opposing wide receivers here. And again, so those are 3. If you're on FanDuel, you can only do 4 of the same player on the same team. Or you could have, Toney, Rice, Sky Moore, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes in there. So to me, this is wherein lies the problem, right? So you have Rice, Toney, Patrick Mahomes would be the quarterback, and then you put in Travis Kelce. So if you have some stones, I'm going to enter. I already have entered a lineup with these 3 wide receivers and Mahomes at my quarterback, and I've completely faded Kelce. That's probably a bad idea, but hey, it's a GPP. And yeah, there it is. Why is he wearing that?
I mean, I could zoom it in even.
And his smile is like a gremlin. Can you zoom in on his smile? Because he's like this.
I'm trying.
He's like this.
I'm trying. I can't really zoom in.
That's what it looks like. He's like this, with a full updo, bouffant or whatever. Yeah, there it is. He's like.
Yeah, I'm trying to zoom it in more.
Get over. Well, I mean, it's so strange, but I get it. Richard Sherman kind of did that shit at the end of his career, but hey, he
There you
played
go.
in a cold environment in Seattle, and then he went to San, and even in San Francisco, it's just habit. They're creatures of habit, and they're superstitious. So maybe one day, if I run into Tony and I can ask him a question, that's the only question I'll ask him. Why are you wearing a ski mask 24/7 when you're on the field? So back to my Kansas City thing here. So we're gonna have to make a decision. Sky Moore, Tony, Rasheed Rice, Patrick Mahomes is a must. It's between Travis Kelce. So to me, we could make two lines out of this because Kansas City's so good, better than the Giants. We could make two lines out of that thing where it would be Rice, Tony, Sky Moore, and then Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. Our second line would start with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and you'd have to cut one of these guys, Rasheed Rice, Tony, or Sky Moore. Personally, I would cut Tony out of this thing. It would be Rice, Sky Moore, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes would be my second Kansas City stack, and we'll go from there. And my second one or third one, and it's dead last, and there's only two guys in this one. It's the Arizona Cardinals. Why? Actually, it's the same game. The Arizona Cardinals wide receivers and the Seattle Seahawks wide receivers because it's nuts across the board. Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore. Michael Wilson has kind of started. I think it's already there. He is already trusted. He's made a name. He has a defined role in that offense. Rondale Moore is kind of the same thing, but if I'm not mistaken, he missed a few games to start the year with some groin issues, something along that. But he is back now, and we know with Rondale Moore, he is the quintessential boomer bust kind of play. And
So
that
he has not missed any games this year.
Oh, he hasn't. Okay, my apologies. But when you look at Rondale Moore, he is without doubt the poster child, could be one of the poster childs for, playing GPP entries. He could have a game where he catches two passes for 30 yards, and you're like, oh shit, that stinks. But he could have this next game, he could catch three passes for 85 yards and a touchdown, and it was an 80-yard touchdown. So to me, boomer bust is what best defines Rondale Moore, and given the matchup, I think Rondale Moore booms this week. And when you look at Michael Wilson, we don't need him to boom because he is seeing targets, 6 to 7 targets. This is my stat line for Michael Wilson this week, 6 to 7 targets, 4 to 5 receptions. I'm thinking around 55 to 60 yards. And if he finds the end zone, this Arizona-Seattle game, when I look at it, as I said, the final is like 28 to 14, 28 to 17. So Seattle is going to score a ton of points, and Arizona is going to be playing from behind. So to me, Wilson and Rondale make for a nice little complementary stack in the same game. So we take Wilson, we take Rondale Moore, and then we throw in Jackson Smith and the Jigba. So there you go. You got three wide receivers from the same game, and we move on, because when you look at Jackson Smith and the Jigba, Arizona 28th overall against opposing wide receivers. And if you wanted to have some stones, Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, they're too expensive to be named in bottom of the barrel. DK Metcalf, we don't know if he's going to play this week. So let's just, if he does or if he doesn't, I don't care. It would be Tyler Lockett. So to me, in this game, we could full game stack Arizona, Seattle in this one, and it would go Michael Wilson, Rondale Moore, JSN, and Tyler Lockett. And it's very doable with their price tags. And to me, that would be one of those stacks where you'd have to have two separate entries, right? Because, if you're going to stack up Arizona wide receivers, you're going to want the Arizona quarterback. If you're going to stack up Seattle wide receivers, you're going to want the Seattle quarterback. So that game, or that way, that's two entries. So far, we got the one entry with the Giants. We got two with Kansas City, and then we have one, two with Arizona and Seattle. So far right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have $5 if we're going to be a $1 single entry worth of lineups in GPP. And that was my crazy idea in terms of stacking, just double, triple stacking wide receivers from the same game on the same team. And we move on from there. And then after that, I haven't put this, it's in front of me now. I will show you, obviously. They're highlighted in different colors, right? I've highlighted pink is Kansas City, green is New York, and then the yellow is Arizona. I haven't started building lineups with these stacks, so I don't know what my flex would be, or what my two running backs would be, things like that. So I'm looking forward to doing that tonight, or maybe in the morning. But that's the way I'm looking for, or that's what I'm looking forward to doing this week at the wide receiver position here. Tutu Atwell in play, maybe a little bit. Elijah Moore in play, maybe a little bit if Watson plays. And the hometown kid, Jamison Williams, also on the list. Baltimore 7th overall against opposing wide receivers. But again, you could add him on the poster for GPP boom or bust, right? He could have 3 catches, 30 yards, but he could catch a 50, 60-yard touchdown, and your day is made in just one play here. So I'm going to work on these, the Giants and the Kansas City and the Arizona, Seattle, game stacks, and I'll see what I get. It should be something fun to do when I get in bed this evening.
So before we head on to tight ends, and we're almost at an hour now, but we got a little bit of time. I don't think the next show starts till 9, so we got a little wiggle room here. But apparently Ron, who made the questionable comment at the beginning of the show, apparently he's been too busy coming up with new ways to try to make fun of us without making fun of us. So he's a little bit behind, and he asked a question about running backs that I told him I would come back to. He says he's behind in real time. He'd like to know why I didn't mention Eckler as a good cash choice. And that's a good question, because now we can. I'll make it brief, but I want to answer the question, right? So, is Austin Eckler viable for cash in the game environment that he's in? The answer is sure. Yeah, of course he is. The reason he's not in my cash pool, Ron, is a couple fold. First of all, I'm already playing Kenneth Walker, right? So I've already got a not as highly priced as Eckler, but I've already got a relatively highly priced running back in there. Now, yeah, I absolutely could play 2 high-priced running backs. There's no problem with that. But I talked about how 100% in I am on Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is very expensive. So being that I'm definitely playing Walker and I'm definitely playing Kupp, it makes it hard to fit in an Austin Eckler. Now, I could, theoretically, right? Like I still can. But then add into the mix, I'm probably playing Patrick Mahomes. Well, now it's going to make it next to impossible. I literally have to punt every other position to be able to play those guys. And that's where it starts to not make sense. If you want to take it out of game theory and you want to put it into, some real terms, against running backs, Kansas City is going up the 3rd fewest points. So it's also not a great matchup. Kansas City is giving up points through the air, not points on the ground. And you could argue and say, well, yeah, but Eckler's not a normal running back. He's more of a pass catcher than he is a between the tackles kind of guy, whatever. And you're not wrong, but either way, this encompasses all running backs, not just not carries. This is, receptions, everything as well. So Ron, to answer your question, that's why Eckler is not in my cash pool. Part of it is statistically, but it's more of a game theory thing and what I'd have to sacrifice that I'm already not willing to sacrifice to do that.
Can I answer this? Can I give Roby Ron Kenobi an answer here?
Yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs defense is and has been unbelievably awesome. Let me throw out some names here. Chris Jones, their defensive tackle. Bolton, their stud linebacker. Drew Tranquill. Now he's starting every game. That was a signing. He came over from the Chargers. Like I said, Drew Tranquill. Mr. Gay is also at linebacker. And let's not forget this cover. He's like a cornerback safety kind of player. Trent McDuffie has stepped up in a big way. So to me, those 6 or 7 guys alone are very good, like unbelievably good at what they do. But so is Austin Eckler. He is one of the better players at his position. But when you look at Chris Jones, so is he. When you look at Trent McDuffie, so is he. When you look at this Bolton at linebacker, so is he. So to me, I'm not saying that Austin Eckler isn't going to find the end zone or hang 50, 60 points, but I'm not willing to take the risk given his price tag against this revamped Kansas City defense, who has been not only unbelievably fun to watch, but they just grind and they play sideline to sideline and they go for it. And to me personally, I think Austin Eckler struggles big time in this. And we go from there. To me, it's just about how good the Kansas City defense has been. And let's not forget Dana, who plays situationally at defensive end, and they move him into tackle sometimes. And he just loves to bat down passes. I think he's already got 3 or 4. So to me, getting the ball out to Eckler, whether it's passing or on the ground, it's going to be tough sledding. And who knows what it could be. Austin Eckler could finish the game with, 2.7 yards a carry, and that would be not good given his price tag. So I am with you 100%, Dave.
All right, let's pop into tight end, and I don't have a whole lot here. I'm looking first at Luke Musgrove, guy that I was riding with early on in the week, earlier on in the season. Also early on in the week, I suppose, but that's not what I was going for here. He is a rookie tight end. And so rookie tight ends, we don't expect consistency from. Again, to add to the Lions homerism, Sam Laporta is the exception, not the rule. He's in the same boat here as Luke Musgrave as far as being a rookie tight end, but Laporta has been consistent. Typically, that is reserved, the consistency, for elite players. Your Travis Kelce's and stuff like that, right? But the matchup he has here, and we've been talking every position. We've talked about this with the Packers, right? Matchup against Denver is fantastic. And again, here, schedule adjusted, they are giving up the most points to tight ends. So, big surprise here. When you pay down, like I talked about with Wan'Dale, it's hard to find volume. So it's often, the matchups that we're looking for. That's the case here for me with Luke Musgrave. And then how fitting. I've had this brought to my attention a couple of times here now with this gentleman's name, but Michael Mayer, right? This is your punt tight end for the week. Yeah. Punt tight end for the week. It's
I got a better Halloween. One, but we'll get there.
Yeah, that's fine. He only saw 2 targets in the first 3 weeks of the season. He has since seen 9 over the last 2 games. Matchup pretty solid here. Chicago giving up the 23rd most schedule adjusted fantasy points to the position. If you need to save a little bit of cash, you can go this route. I'm almost surely playing Musgrave, but I have no problem with playing, Mayer. And then I got to talk Travis Kelce. I mean, you kind of know the drill, right? Travis Kelce, if he's healthy, he's cash viable. Obviously, you could pair him with Mahomes if you're willing to make the sacrifices across your lineup. To get into a little bit of game theory with this move, if you play double tight end, you can play Kelce, with my, stacks or with my locks. You're sacrificing quite a bit of projection to do so. So to me, again, this is more of an MME type play than a cash play. But if you only lock in Mahomes and Kelce, and you don't play the Cup and you don't play the Kenneth Walker, you can build a lineup where you don't sacrifice so much projections, and you can do it without doubling it up at tight end. But it just doesn't work this week for me. So while Kelce is available, he's viable. He's just not a guy that I can see making it into my cash lineups this week.
And that's fine. And that's understandable. I have 4 guys I wrote down. I'll start with one briefly, who I mentioned. I think I mentioned it live on the show on Sunday. And I know I wrote it in print in Bottom of the Barrel, the tight ends article. When it comes to the Chargers tight ends, right? It was, if Donald Parham is going to be inactive, Gerald Everett was going to be the play. We saw that coming. And I said, so wait till the last minute And if Donald Parham Jr. is inactive, I'm rolling with Everett. I think that was a question actually that was brought up, but I was already thinking it. And look what happened. Gerald Everett caught a touchdown pass last week because Parham Jr. was out, and we're going to run the same route again. If Donald Parham Jr. is inactive, Gerald Everett is a very good play for me. Janu Smith has had this resurgence all of a sudden, and Atlanta's playing in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's 12th overall. I mean, Janu could literally finish with 3-4 catches, 35, 40 yards, and a touchdown, and boom, the value is made. Cade Otton as well. Tampa Bay is playing Atlanta. Atlanta's 30th overall against opposing tight ends. And look, as it stands now, Baker Mayfield has I don't want to say a lot on his plate, but he has a lot. When he's on the field, he has a lot to do. He's got a lot of folks to kind of take care of, right, in terms of the wide receivers and the running backs. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White here. But to me, Cade Otton gets looks. And anytime he gets a look, they seem to be those high upside target looks in the red zone. And he is cheap as can be. Atlanta stinks. But my number one favorite tight end of the week has got to be in Arizona. Arizona's playing Seattle. Seattle 4th overall against opposing tight ends. So it is tough sledding, but it's got to be Trey McBride. Somehow, somewhere along the lines within the last 3 days, Zach Ertz has completely just fallen out of favor. He might have even been shot out into space for all I know, because last I looked, Trey McBride was over 300,000 additions trending on the sleeper app. Hey Jamie Parag, he is such a good dude. He's in my he's in the Facebook group that I run, and he's always supportive, shares my stuff, and I appreciate everything Jamie does. So thank you, Jamie, for being here. But back to Trey McBride and Zach Ertz getting tossed into space. Trey McBride was a kid people were talking about along the same lines as that Chig OK over in Tennessee. These dynasty stashes 2 or 3 years ago. And now when you're looking at, week 7 of the 2023 season, to me, Trey McBride, as cheap as he is, should see, to me, a lot of work. So why don't, instead of, as I was saying, I only had 2 Arizona wide receivers, right? When we were talking about that, I'm going to add in Trey McBride in with my Arizona wide receiver stack and put Trey McBride in the tight end position as well. So there you go. There's our third Arizona Cardinal that we can feel comfortable in another game stack. So when we look at DSTs, David, I will toss it to you because again, it is Friday. There's a lot going on. There's still a bunch of practice reports to come out, but I know mainly today was walkthroughs. There's going to be no physicality at any kind of practice tomorrow. Tomorrow might be a chill day. Watch some film. Let's eat. Let's rest, relax, and boom, we're off and running Sunday morning. So I don't think anything wild is going to happen between now and then. But when we look at the defenses, you talk to me here because I have yet to look at those.
Well, it pains me here a little bit, and I don't want to contradict myself or anything, but this will give me some of that street credit back that I think I've lost because we've talked so much about the Lions, right? We're Lions fans. We've talked a lot about the Lions, but let me earn some of this street credit back because I'm telling you that my cash defense, I hate to say it, going to be the Ravens, right? The value here is just too great. A lot of times, in cash, you're simply looking to pay down at defense, and very rarely can you pay down and get a good matchup. As I was going over defenses, everyone that has a solid matchup is priced up. And I could give you a couple of names, but they're way out of my comfort zone for defense. So almost surely going to be playing the Ravens. I guess things could happen to change that, but that's probably where I'm going to look. And as much as I've talked about, and listen, this goes back to something we literally talk about every single week is, I'm not so worried about how many points that these defenses are giving up. We're looking for sacks and turnovers and touchdown potential, right?
Oh, that
So
good stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So here I've been talking at almost every position about, hey, this Chiefs and this Chargers game, this is the best game environment, right? So I'm insinuating we're going to have a 28-35 type game. We're going to put up a lot of points. So clearly the defenses aren't in play, but no, that's not how it works. So the Chiefs, for me, are very much in play here. Value-wise, they're extraordinarily cash viable. Again, it's not a much better matchup than what the Ravens have against the Lions defense. And if the salaries were the same, I would prefer the Chiefs because I just think that they're in a better situation for sacks and turnovers than the Ravens, but it is what it is. Defense in cash is usually not pretty. You're not usually playing, teams where you're like, oh, I love this matchup, or I love.
Yeah. Oh,
You're saving salary. So for me, it's almost surely going to end up being the Ravens. I could argue the Chiefs, and if you want another one, more of an MME kind of thing, I don't mind the Giants this week. The defense position is already extraordinarily volatile. It's by far the most volatile position in any DFS sport that there is. And it's not like the Giants, have a good defense, but Commanders, their opponent, giving up the 31st most schedule adjusted points to defense and special teams. And why is it? It's for all the reasons we've already talked about. The Commanders throw the ball at an extraordinarily high rate. When that happens, what does that mean? We get increased chances for sacks. We get increased chances for interceptions. We get increased chances for, sack fumbles, which lead to touchdowns. So if you want to go the Giants route, it's very, very volatile. But for MME, that's where I'm going. I'm not going to play the Ravens in MME. Maybe I'll play the Chiefs. But for the Giants, I can't do them in cash. But in MME, I love it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I have three defenses that I kind of put together last minute here, and I'll give you a quick synopsis of each one as it hit me. And it goes Broncos, Atlanta, and the Colts. And I don't think you mentioned any one of those. The Ravens were on the table, and to be fair, I think the Lions could be on the table as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Lions could. I don't want to name 12 defenses, but yeah,
Lions, no doubt.
I could argue for them.
To be fair, and I'm not kidding, I have the final score of the Detroit-Baltimore game. The Lions winning 17-14. So
I was gonna say 2017. So yeah, we're right on.
Not going to be a ton of points going on there, but also the Lions just don't turn the ball over like at all.
I know. It's the salary
and also, I understand. And Jared Goff he had this exception, like extraordinary where he didn't throw an interception in 500 and something passes. So to me,
second or third longest in NFL history.
Yeah, you got to have Stones to start the Baltimore Ravens, and Stones is what wins you a ton of money in GPPs and things along those lines. But to me, the Broncos are playing Green Bay. The Broncos are at home, and excuse me, Mile High Air, whatever. What are we going to do? Jordan Love, as of late, has been a little bit shaky. So what are the chances that the Denver Broncos don't pick this kid off 2-3 times? Something crazy, where at the end of the game, folks are talking about is Jordan Love really the guy in Green Bay? He has such a bad game on Sunday, let's say, that by Monday morning, all sports talks radios are going to say, is Jordan Love really the guy that's going to take Green Bay to the promised land? Could that happen? Of course. Will it happen? We don't know. But to me, the Broncos at Green Bay, Atlanta at Tampa Bay, and that one is pretty simple to me. And it's all about Baker Mayfield. He turns the ball over. He makes reckless decisions. He's very emotional. But that's what gives him that competitive the fire, that in that nature. But to me, he gets so emotional. There could be a reason why he is still hung up on something weird that happened last week in the last game, where it carries over into Sunday's game, and he is just completely, just not there, in his headspace here, and Atlanta takes advantage of that. And again, Baker Mayfield, we've seen him be a turnover machine. Didn't he throw six interceptions in a game before? I mean, he's got it in him. He's got it in him to give the opposing defense, a ton of points in this one. And then last but not least, the Colts. I'm not sure if you mentioned them, but if you did, I
didn't.
think
but they would be one that you could pay more than I'm comfortable with in cash.
Yeah, correct. And in GPP, the same. In GPPs, I don't mind spending up for DSTs, because that could make or break your team in terms of winning a ton of money. But it would be the Colts, and it's just merely based off who's the quarterback going to be. If it's Deshaun Watson, then I will take a step back. If it's PJ Walker again, then I'm absolutely in, because you're looking at Jerome Ford. It would be the starting running back, and the wide receivers are Amari. Well, I shouldn't say that. Amari Cooper's a stud. Elijah Moore, hopefully he pops at sometimes this season. But to me, it would be the Broncos, the Falcons, and the Colts. And I did the best I could to describe or to paint a picture on why I like each individual defense there, Dave.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we said earlier, right? This is our rough draft. This is apparently, according to Ron, this is our D- game, or our D game. So, we've thrown a lot at you here. Things are very fluid. It's Friday evening. It's 8:30. Basically. So we've got to see, what happens on Saturday tomorrow. We'll hopefully get some of this injury stuff, figured out. Where we can go. Chris and I will be back at noon on Sunday. That's 12 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be back to give that final paper, our essay that we've grinded over all week long and polished that turd up, and we're ready to hand that sucker in. So that happens Sunday at noon. We go, I don't know, we go until we're done, but somewhere in the 12:45 neighborhood or so, give you all the information as up to date as you can possibly be before lock. End it to give you enough time to make actionable changes if so needed. But Chris, always a pleasure, my friend. I'm glad that you didn't have any issues that got you kicked out this week. You were able to hang with me the whole time. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. We had tons of comments here tonight. Couldn't get to all of them. A lot of them were like redraft type questions, which that's not what we're here for. So yeah. I apologize, but those intentionally get skipped in this particular case. But anything you want to add before we let the people go until Sunday?
No, not at all. I had a moment. When I put my hand up, I wanted something to say, and it flew by. And my grandma always says that if you forgot what you were going to say, it was probably going to be a lie anyway. So I'll leave it at that. So to everyone out there, be good, be safe, have a great Friday evening, and carry that success into the weekend. And before you know it, we'll have positive momentum Sunday morning on the broadcast as we're building, as we're giving you the best possible plays to put you in the best possible position to win a dough. So before we split, make sure you go to the YouTube page, the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube page. Just do a subscribe, like the video. I mean, these things are so fun to do. And again, I feel uncomfortable, asking people for things or begging people to follow my channel or begging people to share my stuff. So if you feel so inclined to go to the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube page and subscribe, that would be wonderful. If you feel so moved by this broadcast, leave us a comment why. We've had some great comments going on around in this one. So I will speak for Dave when I say we will see you again early Sunday morning, actually first thing Sunday afternoon, right at 12 noon, and we're going to get rolling. And trust me when I say this, you're not going to want to miss it. There is a ton of money to be won in week 7, and Dave and I are going to be the ones to get that money into your pocket. So have a good weekend. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
See ya.